Thank you for joining us, Tom. There has been some baseball news, as there always is, this past week, and I want to start with the state of the business of baseball. Okay. ESPN opted out of a big media rights deal. They were paying $550 million per year for baseball. ESPN claims it was a giant overpayment. The regional sports networks, that whole model is sort of in a period of transition. You've got a wild difference in spending these days between the Dodgers and Mets of the world and the small market clubs. Are you at all concerned that the amount of revenue that's coming into the sport today may decline in years to come?
Well, first of all, that was like 5 questions. But I'll start from the top. In general, baseball is doing very, very well. I think that the last couple of years, you've seen attendance increases across the last few years. I think the rule changes have been very, very helpful for the, getting more people to the ballpark. Something people don't realize that baseball still is America's pastime. More people go to baseball games than hockey, football, basketball, and soccer combined. So when you think about that, people are still coming out. People are still enjoying the experience. We have more kids than ever playing Little League. We have more girls playing softball than ever. So I think, baseball itself, like the core of baseball, is very, very healthy. The things that you bring up, like, you talk about the ESPN deal or just the changing media landscape, those are challenges. I'm not part of the guys that work on the national deals, and I have no context around that. But you have to keep it in the spirit of what's actually happening in the whole media landscape. For so many years, we had a very good setup where you basically had your national games in one pocket, and then you had your local games on your local RSNs. It all went through your local cable, or dish, and it was a great model. But the model's changing. People are consuming their media in different ways, and we're kind of going through the growing pains of matching up our content with the people, how they want to see games. And so we've, with regard to Sunday Night Baseball, ratings were up last year. It was up even more in the good demographics, the young male demographics. So the product itself was healthy, but I think the model is really what's challenging us.
What's Commissioner Rob Manfred saying to you in terms of his confidence that he can recoup the media dollars that are there today?
Well, I don't know that he's saying anything particularly to owners, but we do know that content is valuable. And look, ESPN was a great partner for a long time, and they will continue to be a great partner through the season. But it also gives us a chance to look for other opportunities to partner with other organizations that who knows? It could all work out very well for everyone.
I have some Cubs questions too. I wrote down a statement that you said, a quote, in a January USA Today article, which is the following. They think somehow we have all these dollars that the Dodgers have, or the Mets have, or the Yankees have, and we just keep it, which isn't true at all. What happens is we try to break even every year, and that's about it. There are certainly pundits out there that say, well, look, our CNBC valuation guru, Michael Ozanian, says the Cubs are worth $4.2 billion. That was last year. He hasn't even done this year's, and you guys bought the team for $900 million. So the Ricketts, they should just spend against the team. Who cares if they're breaking even? What do you have to say to that class of people?
Well, first of all, maybe using the word break even wasn't the way I wanted to say that. Just want people to know that every dollar that's spent at the ballpark goes back into putting a more competitive team on the field. Away from that, everyone knows, every Cub fan knows that we've invested roughly $1 billion into Wrigley Field itself and the neighborhood around. So it's not a matter of us not investing. We are putting the best team on the field that we can every year. But there are teams that have resources that we don't, and nothing we can do about that. Fortunately for baseball, player development is as important as how much you're spending on free agents. So we just keep grinding on and doing the blocking and tackling that that build the organization from the bottom up, and hopefully will make us competitive on a consistent basis going forward.
How do you decide your yearly spend, though? If it isn't quite break even, is it the luxury tax that you use as sort of, hey, we want to be around that?
No, it really is. You basically take all the dollars that you make, take out your expenses, and then push everything across the table to the baseball guys to put to work however they decide.
I mentioned the Dodgers and the Mets. The Dodgers have this big regional sports deal. The Mets have an owner that's worth $21 billion and seems to be okay with taking losses, even if he has to improve that team.
Yeah.
You're in the National League with them. Has that altered your strategy when you're like, well, how do we compete against these teams?
Well, I think for us, our strategy has been the same since day one, and that's be consistent and try to make the playoffs. Like, the fact is that in the NFL or the NBA, typically the team that had a better season had a better regular season almost always wins the playoff matchups. Things happen, upsets happen. In baseball, what we want to do is just be consistent. We want to win our division every year, get to the playoffs. And I can't do anything about what dollars other teams have, but what I can do is try to build an organization that keeps us consistently in that mix. And I think that this year, Jed Hoyer's done a pretty good job of bringing us back up from some couple bad years we had. But we have a really good farm system. We've supplemented it with several free agents over the last couple years. And I think that going to this year, we should be the team to beat in our division. And if we win our division, then anything can happen, and we believe we'll be back in the mix this year.
You can't do anything about the amount of money that other teams spend, but the league could if there was a salary cap. Do you feel like we are heading toward a lockout at the end of 2026 with the way things are going?
I hope not. I hope there's a conversation to start way before the end of the contract, and I'll leave all that collective bargaining stuff to the league.
I want to talk about your decision to buy the team. You bought the team in 2009. Mm-hmm. That was an ideal time to buy the team. Anyone that bought in 2009, I think for most assets, they're happy about it now. At the time, you were CEO of a bond underwriting company. Mm-hmm. If I had a scale of sexiness of job, I think owner of baseball team here, CEO of bond underwriting company, somewhere in there. So my question is, when you bought that, did you buy the team because you thought it was a good investment, or did you buy it because you've been a Cubs fan for a kid, or both? Yeah,
it started with the fact that we were just huge Cub fans. I have two brothers and a sister. We would literally buy bleacher tickets for every Saturday and Sunday game throughout the summer. It was like our social life. Wrigley Field was our social life. Met my wife at Wrigley Field in the bleachers, and so it was just that. Number one thing is we were just huge Cub fans. Number two was we have my father started a company that became Ameritrade. And so it was a family business when we were young, but as it went public and merged a couple times, it really wasn't a family business anymore. And we thought this is something that could be like a long-term family business. And then sports teams really do lend themselves to family ownership, and that's been great. The third thing was, I looked at it and said, this team, it changes ownership every 60 years or something. The Tribune had it the Tribune was the owner for I guess maybe 30 years or 25 years, but the Wrigley's for 60 or something. And you look at that and say, well, that may never happen again. And we think we can help. It was really a terribly underinvested in asset. Wrigley Field was falling apart. The organization didn't have a lot of support from the Tribune Corp. The Tribune Corp was going bankrupt at the time. So we just felt like we could help the organization overall. And then we kind of backed into whether it was a good investment or not. And then when you do the homework on that, it turns out that sports teams are typically pretty steady, steadily improving over time. They're not correlated to other assets if that's something you're worried about. And they are just generally good investments. But ultimately, it wasn't like, let's go buy a sports team or we want to be in baseball. It was the Cubs or nothing.
Were there any lessons that you learned from your job in corporate bond underwriting that you could take over as owner of the Cubs?
Well, yeah, I mean, just general, like how you set up, because the team was a subsidiary of the Tribune Corp. And so they didn't have any of their own accounting software or systems or any of that stuff. So I had experience running frankly, a number of employees about the same size company. So so there was a lot of things that were really natural those first few months getting everything set up. After that, they're pretty different, I'd have to say. But it was good to have the experience of already running an organization before I got there.
You mentioned sort of the steadily rising valuation of baseball teams. We've seen an influx of private equity now, not just for baseball, but all sorts of different sports. Has that been a net positive on the valuation, and do you expect that to continue?
Yeah, I think it is a net positive, and I do expect it to continue. When you look at what's happening, the private equity firms have taken a look at it and said, well, this is actually a pretty solid diversified asset. Let's just take limited partnership stakes in a number of teams and kind of ride the appreciation of sports as an asset class. And I think that's where we're changing. Like, it used to be just an investment from a rich guy investment or whatever, but now it's going from something that's just kind of a fun thing to an actual asset class. And I think that the valuations, they're supported by the fact that these are high performing, accreting assets, and the fact that more money's coming in. And so when you look at some of the money that's coming in, that's going to help increase the value of the companies, of the teams, but it's also going to help liquidity for all the limited partners. So I think it just makes it a more valuable investment overall. But it doesn't increase your cash flow, it just increases your valuation.
Sure.
It's not a whole bunch to do with that.
That's right. We're in an intimate gathering here, so I'll ask you an intimate question. You have been the owner.
As intimate as it can be with cameras and a microphone.
I was hoping you might forget that part of it.
Right.
Is there a trade that comes to mind for you during your time as the owner that involves players that have since retired that didn't happen but almost did, that would have altered the trajectory of the Cubs in any way, or even one that you just still kind of think about?
Yeah, well, we spent a lot of time thinking about what Bryce Harper's worth as a free agent, sitting with Theo talking about that. That's one that we kicked around that obviously we never executed on. But there was a handful of drafts where you see guys and oh, we could have had this guy and we got this guy.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I think that over the years, I think our guys have always made pretty good decisions. And it's easy to second guess decisions when you're looking back, 5 or 10 years. I think in the moment, I think our baseball guys have always done the right thing for the team. And there's certain trades you wish you could have back, like guys, minor leaguers you traded away that went on to become stars. But at the time, you needed that extra piece for the current team. So I don't know. There's a lot of things you do differently with 2020 hindsight, but in real time, I think we all did pretty smart things.
Everybody loves Wrigley Field. You own Wrigley Field as part of the team also. But it's an old stadium, and you did put $1 billion into it. Your family put $1 billion into it in 2014 to refurbish the park. But I'm curious if Wrigley acts as a constraint at all on the revenue opportunities, because it's only so big. You could knock it down and build a brand new stadium if you wanted to, but there's probably there would be an enormous amount of backlash if you did that.
Right, I'd have to leave. No, I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. I think that the beauty of Wrigley is that it's authentic. I mean, it was built in 1914, and the upper deck was put in 1927, and the bleachers in the 30s, and so all the pieces were there a long time ago. And so when we went to look at renovating Wrigley and improving it and making it a modern game day experience in a very traditional park, our North Star was, whatever we do, this has to be the ballpark that your grandfather would recognize. And there were people that actually some people that wanted to scrape it and build another one like it. And I'm like, we don't want a replica, we want the real thing. And so.
Is that a shot at Yankee Stadium?
No, it's not. No, it's not. And I don't have any thoughts on Yankee Stadium at all. But there was some local people that had an idea that you could like scrape it and rebuild it. And so, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted to spend the extra time and the extra money to preserve it and improve it. And so, and I think that's all worked really well. And I don't think the capacity is a constraint. You know, I mean, a lot of the new baseball parks try to come in around 40,000. I think that
Wrigley's what, 42, something like that?
Yeah, 41.
Yeah.
And so we actually took out a few seats in the renovation. And honestly, like, of all the things that happened, obviously we won a World Series and for the first time in whatever many years, but renovating Wrigley and the neighborhood around it is something that I feel like a lot of ownership over as our family legacy, because it's hard to control what happens on the field. You give as much money as you can to your guys and give as much time and patience and facilities as you can, and then you just hope for the best.
You mentioned that World Series. I was curious, what is the feeling that you now remember feeling in the moment that you won the World Series, if you could put it into a word?
Well, that was a pretty unique game. Relief was undoubtedly the main feeling. And then in the years past, like, you're just so, you look back and you just look what a razor's edge that game was on, and just the fact that it broke our way that night and we won is such a big thing to so many fans, and it just meant so much to so many people that you just thank your stars that it happened.
Last question. The NFL's superpower may be its scarcity, and maybe the NBA's superpower is social media. What is Major League Baseball's superpower?
I think it's the social nature of the game. I mean, the fact is, like, you go to a baseball game to talk to the people you're with, right? You can't do that in other sports. And you go into a baseball game, you can take your 7-year-old daughter or your 87-year-old grandfather, or father in my case. But like you can take anyone, and it is still a place where people gather. There's there's these magical summer nights that people spend sitting and enjoying each other's company, and I think that is what makes baseball so powerful and why it still is America's national pastime. You know, why people go to all of our games plus all the minor league games. It has that social vibe to it, and I think that's our power, and that also loops into the fact that, you know, it's been that way for a long time, and it's our past and it's our present and it's our future, but it's just a special place to be.
Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.